Some heretics were burned. Others became gods. We think of heresy as rebellion, a rejection of the sacred, a crime against heaven. But in the ancient world, heresy was often just an idea, one different word, one strange symbol, one forbidden question. And for that, people were executed, others were erased, and a few, they were exalted, because sometimes the heretic becomes a prophet, and the condemned becomes divine. If you're drawn to sacred conflict, ancient danger, and the beliefs they try to bury, subscribe now, because tonight we uncover the heresies that outlived their executioners. In the 4th century, a man named Priscillian dared to say something radical, that the human soul was of the same essence as God, that within each of us burned a divine spark, not metaphorical, but real. To the early Christian establishment, this was heresy. It blurred the line between creator and creation. It challenged the priesthood's monopoly on holiness. Priscillian drew followers. He practiced asceticism, meditation, and scriptural interpretation. He taught that true revelation comes from within. He was arrested, accused not just of false belief, but of sorcery. He was tortured, and in the year 385, he became the first Christian executed for heresy by other Christians. But his ideas didn't die. They lived on in the underground currents of mysticism, Gnosticism, and esoteric Christianity. Today, many spiritual systems teach the same thing, that the divine isn't just above, it's within. Priscillian died a heretic, but in modern eyes, he may look like a prophet. Inquisitors called him dangerous. Theologians called him mistaken. Some were excommunicated, others were imprisoned, and centuries later, they were canonized. John of the Cross was imprisoned by his own religious order. Why? Because he spoke of a union with God too intimate, too mystical, too personal. His poetry blurred the line between divine ecstasy and human experience. Teresa of Avila was investigated by the Inquisition. She spoke with angels. She had visions. She claimed a kind of knowledge that came not from doctrine, but from rapture. Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake. He taught of infinite worlds, of a cosmos filled with divine sparks. Today, he's remembered not as a criminal, but as a visionary. And Hildegard of Bingen, now a saint, wrote of cosmic visions, divine music, and the feminine face of God. In her time, she was barely tolerated. These weren't just rebels. They were mystics. They saw God where others saw danger. And in time, the church had to accept that some heresies were too beautiful to stay condemned. In the Gospel of Thomas, a text banned from the biblical canon, we meet a figure called Didymus Judas Thomas. Didymus, Greek for twin. Thomas, Aramaic for twin. His name, literally, twin. Twin of whom? Early Christian traditions suggest something shocking. That Thomas was a spiritual twin of Jesus, a mirror, a second self, not biological, symbolic. This wasn't about family. It was about identity. Gnostic traditions taught that Christ had an inner self, a luminous presence, and that Thomas was its reflection. The Gospel of Thomas is filled with teachings of self-discovery, light within, and the kingdom of God is inside you. The idea was heretical because it made divinity accessible. It removed the need for hierarchy. If Christ has a double, then so do you. Thomas wasn't just a disciple. He was you, if you dared to awaken. The ancient Valentinians believed that God had a form, not a bearded man in the sky, but a fullness, a pleroma, with shape, structure, and divine emanations. To them, the divine was not abstract. It was deeply personal. Feminine and masculine, visible and hidden, they drew diagrams, circles within circles, pairs of divine beings, mind and truth, word and life, Father and grace. To Orthodox theologians, this was dangerous. It fragmented the unity of God. It introduced feminine divinity into a patriarchal structure. But the Valentinians weren't random mystics. They were philosophers, priests, teachers. Their vision of God was intimate, complex, and embodied. Today, echoes of this survive in sacred geometry, Kabbalah, and esoteric Christianity. The body of God, they said, was not male, not female, but complete. And for that vision, they were erased. Before Lucifer became a devil, he was a symbol. In Latin, Lucifer means light bringer, a title for Venus, the morning star. And in early Christian poetry, it was used for Christ himself. But things changed. In Isaiah 14, a taunt against a fallen Babylonian king was reinterpreted. The morning star became a rebel angel. A story grew of pride, rebellion, and fall. But some saw something deeper. Mystics and occultists began to view Lucifer not as Satan, but as a misunderstood archetype, the one who brought knowledge, who defied blind obedience, who illuminated. To them, Lucifer represented the spark of intellect, the flame that questions, the soul that refuses to bow. This was heresy. It still is. But it's also the foundation of entire schools of esotericism, from the Luciferians to the Gnostics to modern occult revivalists. Because sometimes bringing light is dangerous, especially in a world built on shadows. In Rome, women could not be priests. Not officially, not visibly, but that wasn't always the case. Long before Christianity, women served as oracles, prophets, and temple keepers. The Vestal virgins guarded Rome's sacred fire. In Egypt, priestesses of Isis led massive rituals. And in early Christian communities, evidence suggests that women held leadership roles. They were called deaconesses, teachers, even apostles. But as the church grew in power, it absorbed Roman hierarchy and Roman patriarchy. Women were silenced, their names removed from scrolls, their gospels banned. Yet some survived. Texts like the Gospel of Mary reveal a different voice, strong, wise, unafraid. In Gnostic circles, Sophia, the divine feminine, was a cosmic womb, the source of wisdom. And still today, in hidden traditions and esoteric circles, that feminine flame burns. They call it a heresy, but it never died. And every age, someone speaks too soon, sees too much, feels something sacred that doesn't match the rule book. And when they do, the system reacts. With fear, with fire, with silence. But not all heresies stay buried. Some grow in secret. Others return centuries later with new names. And a few become the foundation of new faiths. So what is heresy really? A threat? A lie? Or a sacred seed planted in forbidden ground? The next time you hear the word heretic, remember this. They might have been wrong. They might have been dangerous. Or they might have just been early.